For this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do painted light, and I'm going to be using a little flashlight like this one. Now you'll notice I am in a closet. That's because I need someplace dark. So if I turn off the light, you can notice it's really, really dark in here. And I kind of need that so I can do the effect that I'm going to do. And some of the things that I'm going to do, and you can kind of see here, I've got a little curio set up here, a little still life. And it's a little dark in the corner there. And I have my camera set on a tripod. Now, you don't necessarily need to use a tripod for this, as long as you can keep your camera steady. You can put it on a table or even on the floor, and that should work for you. So I've kind of set up my set, and there are some settings on my camera that I need to make sure that are done. One, I set my camera in spot metering mode. The reason I do that is because what I want is I want to get the exposure for just the area that is in the center. And then I'm going to be pointing my flashlight at that area and get the meter reading off of that. So I set to spot metering, and then I also set a timer. Now I want to set a timer on my camera because I don't want the camera moving around while I press the button. So that's why the timer is on. I'm also going to use a real low ISO, like 100. Now this flashlight is not very powerful, but it's going to be just right for the effect that I'm going to do. I'm also going to start with kind of a small aperture. That small aperture is going to give me the depth of field that I want, but it's also going to allow me to have longer exposures. So I'm going to go ahead and get my exposure meter reading. I'm going to turn the lights off here and turn my flashlight on and wake the camera up. And checking my meter, it says that my exposure should be at about 10 seconds. So 10-second exposure at f13. But that's not where I'm going to stop. Now I'm going to go ahead and take that photo just so you can see what 10 seconds looks like. And then I'm going to do what you're supposed to do with painted light, and that's multiply the exposure time by 3. But I'm going to take that 10-second exposure. Now when I do painted light, I go ahead and I paint even while the timer is on, because I want that light moving, and you can kind of see how I'm doing this. Just painting all over, kind of scribbling all over that with the light. Now you keep that light moving because you don't want to have little hot spots for the light. So I kept that light moving, and I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that 10-second exposure and see what it says, what it looks like there. And you can even see this little effect here where you get that squiggly light from the light as it reflected on that. But that was 10 seconds. It was a little bit dark. So what you're supposed to do with painted light is multiply your exposure times 3. So if it was a 10-second exposure, I multiply by 3, my exposure should be 30 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust that for 30 seconds. And once my exposure is set for 30 seconds, I'm ready to begin again. So timer is going. The other thing that you're going to want to make sure you do is make sure that you have manually focused or focus before and lock that focus off, because you don't want that focus to shift, or you don't want that camera to have a hard time focusing when you're moving the light around. And you notice I'm just kind of painting all over the place and trying to get even lighting, all kinds of directions there, and even kind of from the bottom. Now you do have to look out for things like glass, because it might give us kind of a bad glare. The first experiment that I was doing with this, I did have that there. The camera just finished, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that photo. Hit play here, and let's take a look at it. Now, it's definitely got more light, but I do notice that I've got this terrible reflection over there. So let's take a look at that again. And a little bit of a hard to do this with the lights off, but there's a little bit of a reflection. So I'm going to readjust that and try to get a better picture. So I'm going to readjust that. But otherwise, it was pretty good. So that's how you do painted light. Now, one of the reasons we do painted light is that we can get this lighting effect that you can't normally get, because the light, instead of coming from one direction, is kind of coming from all directions. And then you can also do some other things with painted light, like light writing. And that's a fun one. But painted light isn't only for something like this, a small still life. You can even do painted light on large scale things. You can do painted light using a flashlight on a building, or you can even use your flash. If you have an external flash, you can paint areas of the scene with painted light. But the best thing with painted light is that you really just gotta experiment. But this particular painted light, don't forget, after you determine that initial exposure, multiply it by 3. And that is a little bit on painted light.